Hello comrades, you watching RedIvanAirsoft and today we'll talk about Uzi, made by Northeast Airsoft. But first, some history lesson. German Jew Gotthard Glass was forced to escape from Nazi Germany at the age of 11, first to England and then to his father in Israel. Back in the days, it was common practice for Jewish repatriates to change their first and last name so it sounds more Israeli. So Gotthard Glass became Uziel Gal, the creator of the famous Uzi submachine gun. Uziel joined Palmach back in 1942, and later in 1948 he was a participant in War for Independence, so he knew exactly what weapons soldiers needed. Uzi was developed in 1950 and was largely based on the Czechoslovakian submachine gun SA-VZ-24 or SA-VZ-26. Basically it is the same submachine gun, but with different stocks. Designed by Yaroslav Holicek, Czechoslovakian weapons were very actively supplied to the Promised Land. Uzi has surpassed the success of its inspiration. Due to the greater manufacturability and high reliability, it was adopted by various law enforcement and military agencies in more than 90 countries. The first and the main user, of course, was Israel Defense Forces. Some sources claim that the adoption date is 1951, others provide 1954, but anyway, the first massive combat appearance of Uzi was Suez Crisis of 1956. After that, Uzi was used in Six-Day War and Yom Kippur War. According to various sources, the last Uzi left the rear units of the IDF at the end of 2003, giving way to Mikrata War. But considering the fact that magnificent Gal Gadot served from 2005 to 2007, and Tavor was tested until 2006, and even was replaced by M4 in units that were testing it during the Second Lebanon War, I think that Uzi held out at least until 2007. Uzi was also used by American specialists in Vietnam. Between 1968 and 1973, the CIA bought around 3,000 Uzis for use in the South Asia. Uzi was used not only by MACV-SOC, Navy SEALs and other US Special Forces, but also by South Vietnamese, as you can see on this picture. By the way, I must say that this guy has his style. In addition, Uzi was also used by United States Secret Service until the end of 80s, like you see on this picture that was taken during the Reagan assassination attempt. In certain amount, Uzi was used during the war in Rhodesia. Speaking of Africa, during the war in Angola, Uzi was used not only by South Africans, but also by Cubans. Uzi was loved by the IRA members in 70s and 80s. First of all, it is pretty concealable, but also it is terribly photogenic, and these guys, they love to take pictures. Uzi even made its way into Afghanistan, despite the fact that Mujahideen were mostly equipped with Chinese or Soviet-captured AKs. In reality, their arsenal was more diverse, from flintlock guns and Enfields up to M16s and Uzis. Some of them fell into the hands of Soviet military personnel, which of course took pictures. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Uzi moved to the Chechen War. It could be seen used by Dudayev's police units of Ichkeria Republic in 1994, and later in the hands of Russian-backed opposition in 1995. And of course, Uzi did not miss the wars in the Balkans, where it was mostly used by the Croats during the conflict in Serbska Krajina. This picture is dated May 28 of 1991. The Croatian police units at the Kranjčević Stadium are receiving the unit's flag from the Tudjman, and today Uzi can be met in Ukraine. In popular culture, Uzi also left the brightest mark. You all remember the great scene when Terminator T-800 with Uzi in his hand tries to kill Sarah Connor to stop the franchise before she starts in the dark phase. Uzi 9mm, the choice of the Terminator. And of course, as you all know, Uzi was also used by Viktor Zakhaev. You know, Viktor Zakhaev. No? Oh god, I'm so old. And of course, it is impossible to imagine the movie about Miami in 80s without guys from the south with Spanish accent wearing Hawaiian shirts and with Uzi in their hands, and later it all turned into my favorite video game, GTA Vice City. Baja el arma. Now stay still, amigo. Let's sit down and talk about Uzi in details. Finally, we can specifically discuss this gas blowback airsoft replica produced by Northeast Airsoft. And first thing I need to point is that Northeast decided to replicate not the standard IDF version of Uzi, but the version produced for West German Army, designated MP2A1. But don't worry, despite the markings, there is no other differences between these two. Speaking about the markings, the first three are on the fire selector. We have three positions: S, E and D. S is safe, E is semi-auto, and D is full auto. I don't know what do they mean in German. My grandfathers fought in the war, so I would not need to learn this language. On the back left side of the receiver, there are some additional markings. MP2A1, which is the model designation, then caliber 9mm, then serial number. This is not a real serial number. Real serial number on the Northeast Airsoft replicas is located under the grip or under the handguard. Next we see IMI, which is Israel Military Industries. 876 is probably the date of manufacturing or manufacturing batch number. Next we see the David star with the Hebrew letter in it. This is probably the acceptance mark. Few words about the controls. Mag release button is located in the button of the grip. Concept is pretty similar to Makarov pistol, and you operate it with your thumb. Here you have your selector switch. Basically it is pretty stiff and it is also operated by the thumb, but of the right hand. And most likely, since it's pretty stiff and tight, you will pull it all the way from safety to full auto, and then you will adjust it to semi if needed. Basically, it is nicely replicated by the Northeast Airsoft. If your gun is on safety, the charging handle is blocked, and even if you release the safety, your charging handle is still blocked, because there is another manual safety on the back. This manual safety is pretty similar to what you see on 1911 pistol. But if on 1911 pistol it is pretty comfortable and you almost don't feel the existence of this thing, on Uzi it is very awkward and extremely uncomfortable. That's why a lot of guys just wrap it around with something to completely disengage it. Another interesting fact is that this charging handle blocking mechanism was added after the accident in German army. There was one guy who was dismounting from the truck and somehow he cocked the charging handle and had a shot, and after that this feature was installed on all German versions of Uzi, but also on the IDF versions of Uzi as well. One more thing about the fire selector, almost forget to tell you, this fire selector is made of plastic. Actually I have a real one which is made of steel or some kind of metal. Actually, from what I know, on IDF Uzis they had both types. Some of them had plastic, some of them had metal. I'm not sure about Germans, which one is more correct, or there is only one correct way, so if you know, please leave your comments below. If you'll try to charge it incorrect, charging handle may stuck at some point. This is not an issue actually, this is the safety feature existed on the real steel Uzi and replicated by Northeast Airsoft. Basically, as you can see, Uzi is an open bolt gun, so when you charge it, the bolt stays in the rear position until you pull the trigger. Once you pull the trigger, the bolt gets released and it picks up the round, in our case BB, right, and pull it to the chamber and strike it right away. That's why basically at some points, right, if you charge the handle enough to pick up the round but not enough to stop, right, without this safety feature you would have some kind of unexpected shots, right, which actually prevented by this feature. Next thing is our stock. To unfold the stock you just simply need to push it and pull, right, and here we have it unfolded. To fold it we'll need to squeeze it like so and turn a little bit. Here there is another button which we need to push, and then we will need to catch this plate and use it as a lever to completely fold it. Now it is secured. Again, pretty simple if you practice. Also, here we have a bayonet lock, and the real steel bayonet will work with Northeast Airsoft Uzi. Speaking about the stock, it wobbles a little bit, but this play in it is just due to the spring. Even real steel one, which we'll install soon, will wobble, but a little bit less. And again, it's only due to the springs. But this one is pretty good as well, so you don't really need to change it if you don't want to. Now let's quickly disassemble this thing, and then we'll talk about some parts compatibility. Field stripping. First of all, you need to remove your magazine. There is a button on top. By pushing it, you release the dust cover. Now dust cover can be removed. It is pretty stiff in the beginning, but it will wear off. Next, you can remove the bolt. Just push it back and lift up. And then the recoil spring. On the recoil spring you have two buffers. We'll discuss them a little bit later, but one of them can be removed. The bolt is the only part of Northeast Airsoft Uzi which is made of aluminum. The rest is made of stamped steel. But even this bolt has steel reinforcements. Also, you can see the plastic nozzle inside. There are two types of nozzles for this thing, for 1 and 1.5 joules. That's what left, the trigger group and the barrel. Here is your hop-up adjustment. If we want, we can unscrew the barrel nut and remove the barrel completely, but I do not think that it is necessary for our fuel strip. Again, everything except the bolt is made of the stamped steel. The assembly is in the reversed order. Install back the recoil spring, then the bolt, and close the dust cover. Insert the magazine. And now we'll discuss the real steel parts which will fit Northeast Airsoft Uzi. And first of all, it is a handguard. And actually I'm cheating here because I installed my real steel handguard in the beginning, and for some reason I cannot take it off, so I'm keeping it. But this is how the Northeast Airsoft handguard looks. And somehow they were able to replicate this shitty structure of plastic, so they did perfect, amazing job. And actually this is not even needed to be replaced, but I had a chance, so I did it. Another thing is our grip panels. Unfortunately, grip panels would not fit because there is some additional labor needed, because your manual safety interacts with them, and there is some cutout that need to be done in order to make them fit. But it is possible, it just takes some effort, so I didn't do it because, again, Northeast Airsoft one is pretty close to the real steel, so I see no point to replace it, especially if it will require some work. And of course, another thing that we already discussed is this fire selector, which can be easily replaced, but to do that you need to remove the lower part and disassemble it, so I don't feel like doing it in the nearest future, but someday we'll definitely do it. Next step is your dust cover. You can install the original dust cover, however, if you do so, you will lose this bolt cage or bolt stop in wrong position safety feature. And of course, your barrel nut is a drop-in fit. Another part which a lot of you probably are interested in checking is of course the stock. First of all, folding stock is not the only stock that can be used on Uzi. As I know, early Uzis were supplied with the fixed wooden stock. Actually, it is quick detachable fixed wooden stock. By the way, some guys didn't bother themselves carrying any kind of stock. You can use this opening in the Uzi frame to attach this guy. Yep, pretty stiff, no wobble. Another interesting thing, to release it you need to push this button. It's not that easy to do, but I guess I managed to do so. Interestingly, this will not fit straight from the box. You'll need to modify it slightly, but by slightly I mean 3-4 moves of the file. If you will take too much material in these sides, it will wobble. So really, you need to be very careful. Next thing is of course our real steel folding stock. First of all, if you want to install it, you cannot use the original screw because it will not fit the stock. But another thing is that even if you buy the real steel screw, then you will need to buy the whole assembly piece because it has different thread. So basically you have two options: to buy the whole assembly, which actually can be easily found, and then you keep your Northeast version aside, or you can basically slightly modify the original Northeast screw and manage it to fit, right? Which is more simple procedure. Fits and looks perfect, play is near to zero. The only two issues are first being that, as you remember to fold it, we need to catch this plate and use it as a lever. Due to this rivet I cannot do so because probably the real steel one has slightly different specs. Maybe it's just me and somebody else may get better stock which will fit perfectly, but even this is not a big issue, we just need to apply some force. However, it would really be easier to use this lever if we could. Another thing is that the color is slightly different, but this is normal even for the real steel Uzis. They had a big variety of colorations, of magazines, of parts and whatnot, like you see on this picture right now. Now let's talk about some pros and cons. One of the biggest pros for me is that this thing as close to the real steel as it possibly can be. It's made of stump steel. The real one weighs 3.5 kilograms, this weighs 3 kilograms and 200 grams. This is pretty heavy boy, but still cool. Another thing, the magazine capacity is exactly 32 rounds, like the real one. If we'll remove this black buffer, we will also decrease the rate of fire, which will make it even more realistic. Another advantage of this product in my eyes is the company manufacturing it. The thing is that Northeast is extremely customer oriented. I personally broke one piece. You see this rubber piece? It flew away in Miami when I was playing. I reached Northeast and they sent me a replacement for free. And for me this is a huge contrast with LCT. I bought a lot of guns from them, and recently I also bought an SVD, which is pretty expensive nowadays, like twice more expensive than this thing, but you cannot even contact them directly. I mean, you can try, but they won't respond. At least they don't respond for me in any social network. And even if you'll try to communicate with them through the dealer, they will ask you to provide the serial number. They will also try to reach you with some other like requirements to buy some parts, and some parts they won't even sell to you, which is nightmare in my understanding, especially for the cost of the product. But Northeast are completely different guys. They always there to help. They even have a Facebook group for the Northeast Airsoft product owners, where they release the latest news, the easy fixes and some other troubleshooting materials. We didn't shoot this thing since the beginning of the video. Now things are getting boring, so let's shoot it a couple times. Semi-auto, full auto.
Yeah, 32 rounds.
And as you saw, this thing is capable to shoot every round you put in it, which is awesome. And now let's talk about couple concerns. And again, as for me, these are not concerns, but for your average airsofter, they would probably be. First of all, Uzi is of course superior compared to the World War II or World War I submachine guns, but it is not your MP5 or MP7 either. This thing weighs 3.2 kilograms, so you cannot shoot it one-handed all day. And again, if you'll compare it to some older submachine gun, right, like World War II or earlier, like this Thompson for example, yeah, that's way shorter, right, and way lighter, and of course way handier. So real Thompson weighs like 5.5 kilograms, well this is 3.2, definitely a winner. But if you'll compare it with AKS-74U for example, and again this is not a submachine gun, but in the Soviet army it was the equivalent of the submachine gun, so we can compare it. This thing actually is not that shorter, this is all the difference. And AKS-74U is lighter, so for most of you guys, I'm not sure if you will be able to play with it, like, or, I mean, you probably will, but if you like it as I do. And another thing is that, don't forget, this is an open bolt submachine gun. It is not that accurate, right? This one is accurate on like 25 meters, I would say, and that's all range you got. And these sights are not helping it. It has flip-up aperture sight for 100 and 200 meters on the back, and this sight is actually way wider than M16 sight. Post, which is adjustable for both windage and elevation at the same time. So again, it doesn't really increase your accuracy this way. Hate it or love it, but it is an outstanding replica of the real steel firearm. And all the minuses it has are the minuses of its real steel prototype, right? And if you can deal with them, or can you deal with them, that's another question you need to ask for you. I personally can, and I can only highly recommend this thing to everyone I know. So I hope you too. Put like, subscribe to my channel, comment what do you think about it, and see you soon.